Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and I'm not just thinking tonight. Actually, tonight we're just talking, and we're talking about Holliston history. I've invited 3 guests. We're going to chat about what it was like to grow up in Holliston. Now, this is in preparation for the tricentennial. Holliston will turn 300 in 2024. And there's a committee formed that is going to write the history of Holliston and is going to also do a website. That whole project is going to take from now until then, for sure. But for that project, we're trying to include as many people as possible. So keep in mind as you listen to us tonight, if you have a story, if you have something that comes to mind, please share it with us because we will put it on the website. We want to make this as much about the people as it is about the events. We're going to do the period from 1950 to today. The reason for picking that time is because Holliston really changed very dramatically in that period of time. It's when the major developments started to be built, the Brentwoods and the Holly Hill and Strawberry Hill and all the rest of them, and then ultimately Queens. And you know, we grew exponentially at that point in time. So anyway, I've invited these 3 folks to come on so that we can start talking about what was it like to live here as a kid, and most especially, what was downtown like? Right now we're doing the future vision for Holliston, and there's a lot of talk about trying to preserve the historical character and the look of downtown and so forth. And when you stop to think about it, it hasn't changed much. I mean, there are some bits of it that have changed. This painting that you see behind us, this is done by Robert Moore, who used to live here, lives in Seattle now. But this is his reflections of Holliston in 1955, and there's still an awful lot of it that looks exactly like that. And occasionally you'll even see the 1955 car park downtown. So anyway, Holliston at one time in its life was a farming community. It was the hub of industry at a different time. For a little while in the late 1800s, we were a resort community for folks from Brookline and Boston. We've been home to a few famous folks. And yes, George Washington came through here, but we're convinced he's gone to every place, so we're not going to harp on that one. Anyway, so let me introduce you to my guests tonight, and we've got 3 of them, as I said, and I'm going to start from my left, and Phil Robshaw. Thank you for coming, Phil.
Thanks.
And Pat Kernan. I want to make sure we get the maiden names in there.
Yes.
Pereira.
Thank you.
And Jack Brockert.
Correct.
I knew I was going to stumble over how I was going to do that. If you know any of the Brockerts, you'd recognize Jack. The rest of these folks, maybe not. But anyway, so first question is just when you graduated from high school, just so people can kind of get oriented. So
71.
65.
69.
Okay, so when you were growing, let's figure out where you lived.
I grew up on Pearl Street.
Okay, just out of the center of town.
Yep.
Okay.
And I grew up on Ashland Street.
Okay, this was obviously before Queens was there, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
I remember Queens.
what did we call the area?
East Holliston.
Okay, I know Bobby harps on the fact it was Gooch's Swamp.
Gooch's Corner. we used
was
to
on
call it.
Ashland Street,
Yes.
yes. And Queens is built on Gooch's Swamp.
Yes.
And for anybody, including myself, who's lived there, you know why. But anyway.
Central Street.
And Jack, you were and the Brockerts are still represented there, right?
Yes, correct.
Yep. Okay. And that would be star signed for anybody else who's
Actually
trying
across the street from Star Sign.
Right.
So.
But that was the business, and your father, Herb Brockert, was very prominent when I moved to town in 1966, and I can remember him stepping into Pete's restaurant downtown with a booming voice and sort of commanding the room as soon as he got there. So anyway, I want to know what downtown was like at that time. Did you go downtown to go shopping? Did your mother ever take you shopping down there? What was downtown like?
My recollection of downtown, I would say in the 50s, was very limited in that I lived on Ashland Street. So for my brother and I, and there were kids in the neighborhood, Ashland Street was our playground. The only time I would come downtown was if my father and mother, drove downtown. My mother never drove. She did drive later on. But Downtown, I remember Fisk's, and the man that wasn't as big as it is now. It was much smaller, and a different person owned it. I thought of his name earlier. I can see him. but I
Gene
can't-
Hackett
Yes, I remember him.
and
yes.
then Bobby Moore.
Yes, exactly. And I remember Pete's Restaurant, and there were 2 drugstores, as I remember. And one of the drugstores, I think it was the one that was on the corner of Exchange and Washington. Was that McKean's?
Yep.
Yes,
That was Mr.
that's where
McKean's.
Judy Landis has a jewelry shop now.
Right, exactly. That used to be McKean's.
And the other one was
There
with
for Raspberry
Barathena.
Lime Rickies.
Yes, and the druggist, I can't think of his first name, but he was a McKean. He lived like behind our house, I mean through the woods, kind of almost at the intersection of Maple and Winter Street, and he used to play bagpipes. And
Oh.
and we would hear them a couple of times a week, maybe a bit early, and my father would be like, "Oh, he's on his bagpipes again." But he was the druggist. I remember a library. As I say, it wasn't my playground because I lived in East Holliston.
Was it your playground?
More or less. If we weren't playing on the street, up on Pearl Street, there was the park. I
Goodwill
spent a
Park
lot-
was already
Goodwill
there?
Park. Yeah, oh yeah. And I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's, which are just on corner of Front Street and Exchange. So I could walk uptown from there, and I'd walk up to the drugstore and get my grandfather's cigarettes when I was 8
How old?
years old.
Okay, so by the time you were 8, you were allowed to walk from Pearl Street?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's like, I grew up in the city of Springfield on a street that was like 4 or 5 lanes wide, and I was crossing that street at 6 years old, you know, and so it didn't strike me as being all that crazy when I moved to Holliston. I thought like crossing Washington Street was no big deal, but it's obviously got to be a big deal.
Well, traffic was nothing like it is nowadays,
No,
let's
that's
face
for
it.
sure.
I mean, we'd bicycle from Central Street downtown, go to Fisk and get actual penny candy, you know, and 50 cents, and you could really fill up your pockets with a ton of candy. And go to McKean's and get Raspberry Lime Rickies was my favorite thing over there. We went to...
Vanilla Coke.
Didn't you like vanilla Cokes? Not my cup of tea, but and the park was there. We used to, they had a swing, or I don't even know what you call it, but
Merry-go-round.
merry-go-round, right? Which we would get, the older kids would put us when we were real little on there and just get us going as fast as we possibly could. Some kids getting off and getting sick after the ride.
Oh, you got thrown off.
Yeah, or you got thrown off, right. But the park was actually fun because it had that, it had a jungle gym, it had big swings you could go way up in the air with, and the chains, and they took all that stuff out and put plastic in instead. So that's a change that to me is, almost criminal, because I like the old-fashioned play stuff. They deem it too unsafe. Anyway, so downtown was, for me, the park, McKean's, Fisk's, and if I was helping my dad, Aubuchon's.
Now let's remind everybody where Aubuchon's was.
Aubuchon's was to the left of Fisk's, part of that building, which is now, I think, their craft center,
Yeah.
was a separate business called Aubuchon's Hardware.
Yeah.
Still in business to various places, just not here. And there was a old gentleman that worked in there that every time you spoke to him, he'd spit on you. So
Must have missed that.
you kind of,
Oh, yeah.
thank God
you
it
were
wasn't
there, you
COVID
couldn't have
era,
missed it.
because he was nasty about spitting every time you spoke.
I do remember that. Because when I opened my store, I used to see them every day. But at any rate,
McKean's had the old phone booth in there.
Yeah.
That was all enclosed
All right.
inside?
inside.
Oh, did you ever,
Payphone.
did you use it? Did you go in there to make phone
No.
calls? See, as a teenager, I do remember doing that, using a phone booth and going
My
in.
mother
always
always
carried
made
dimes
a
in your
dime
penny
the
loafers.
That's right, so you could make a call in an emergency.
Yep, absolutely, and I did do that, yeah. So what about the shopping downtown? Not something you guys probably thought about, but you were sent down for cigarettes, okay.
Yeah,
You got
that's
penny
it,
candy.
Penny candy, yeah, I mean, hardware store, Fisk's, models, used to go and buy models and baseball cards and, baseballs and toys and stuff like that.
We didn't have as many banks back then, did we? Because when
Holliston Hopkins
Holliston
Savings
Hopkins,
Bank
but-
was where, next to Superette.
Where-
Yeah, the brick
Where
building.
Kamala
And then
was
There.
for
Guaranty
a
First
while.
Trust was the other corner.
Yeah, I worked there for years,
Okay.
too.
Yeah, Framingham Trust, yes. But I can remember when Guarantee First Trust went in down at the Village, or whatever, the plaza, Hollis Plaza.
Where
down
Tabletop.
Where Tabletop is. I mean, that's where the bank started.
Yeah.
And that was when we just moved in, so it was like in the late 60s, late 60s.
Well,
Yeah.
Then they moved up to.
Then they moved up
after
to
they- the Historical Society, which Al ran out
Yep.
of, and then they tore that down and built the
Oh,
Guarantee
then
there.
they built the Guarantee Bank
Yeah.
there. right.
Yep, and they did have a drive-through, which we no longer allow downtown, which is probably a good thing, given the traffic that we have downtown. You could be there for a weekend.
I was thinking of that, I was thinking about downtown used to have diagonal parking.
Oh, God, I
rather than the
remember.
parallel parking. And I
Yep.
can't imagine trying to back out into traffic nowadays because people are not as forgiving as they used to be, you know?
It's not.
They're
Bad
just not
enough down at
courteous.
the church trying to back out of the diagonal parking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just,
People had, during the time that we were, the town was discussing the traffic lights, there were people who advocated for diagonal parking for two reasons. One, because it narrows the roadway, okay? It makes everybody slow down to a dead standstill as a rule, because you're waiting for somebody to come out. And if you are stopped at a dead standstill, you're obviously almost in the intersection. And with the amount of cars and so forth coming through, obviously it wouldn't have worked. But it is still considered a good way to slow traffic down.
Yeah, I
But I don't
remember
want to
that.
be the one backing up into
No,
it. It was
no.
always, I didn't like it particularly, but.
No, I remember that.
Yeah. So now, I know that Joanne Hulbert and Bobby Blair talk about a clothing store down there. No? Okay.
I don't remember.
There was
clothing
a
store.
Betty's and Jimmy Inch, and I don't remember what Jimmy Inch's was all
Betty's
about.
was behind. That was behind Colonial Bank, TD Bank, Colonial
Pharmacy.
Pharmacy. The new building had Betty's, which was sold shoes and repaired shoes. So there could have been a clothing store in that little building.
Oh.
That's, I never paid a lot of attention, other
Right.
than Betty's, to what was in that building.
Yeah, and then
Well-
did John take over from Betty's?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I think
Was
so,
it the
yeah.
whole strip mall? Because there's that store that's there now. She's been there for years. And you can buy like shirts and stuff in there. Oh, God.
Grapevine?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can buy stuff in there, but I'm trying to think when that was built.
Jackie and I didn't do too much shopping.
No. Candy was more my
We
forte.
left that to other people.
I see. Okay, so did you kids, as teenagers, hang around downtown?
Really wasn't a lot downtown there was Ararat for a while and the teen center.
Oh, let's talk about Ararat. Ararat was a whole generation of, the attempts. It was an attempt by the older people in town to give teens a place to go. And so it was on Hollis Street, just an old building that somebody let you all use. And did you actually use it?
I never did.
We had, prior to that, there was a teen center in the basement of the town hall, which got used a little bit. I wouldn't say it was a great popular place, but on rainy days, it was a place to go and hang out and play a little ping pong and relax, whatever. I think the greatest thing the town did when I was a teenager is they had Friday night dances at the town hall. And that was a blast. I thought that was the greatest thing. I mean, it was some socialization, with your peers or seniors all the way down to 7th grade.
Yeah.
And, you just got to interact with people. Sometimes there was some fights, sometimes there was, dancing and whatever, but it was, I think society is missing that now. There's not, kids get on their cell phone and they text. And there's no interaction. And dancing is not holding somebody anymore. Dancing is, all these moves and stuff like that. And which is all well and good, but it doesn't teach you some of the skills that I think are important to be loving, caring people.
When I was growing up, we would have dances, in like grades 7 to 12, I went to the Adams School. was the high school then, it was fairly new. And we had dances like in the gymnasium.
Yeah,
Well, maybe,
yeah.
I don't know, once every
Yeah,
month
yeah,
or so.
we had
and-
those too.
But my memories of the basement of the town hall when I was young was the police station was there, and also the building department, I think, because, yeah.
It was there for years.
It was.
Yeah.
'Cause- and I remember when we built our house, the house I live in now, that's where the building department was still there. Well, it's still there
It's
now,
still there now.
actually. I know. But, yeah, so I do remember as a little girl, the police
Yes, they
were
had the
in
jail in
basement.
Town Hall, in
Yeah,
Lower
I know,
Town
and I
Hall.
always wanted to see it. My father was like, no, you're not going to go see it.
Just in case somebody's in it, and somebody you recognize. Because you'd probably recognize everybody in town, you know? Yeah.
Well, that's a big difference of Holliston today and the 50s, is everybody knew everybody in Holliston. Everybody, you had
Yep.
block parties, people went to their neighbors. You know, I mean, people socialize so much more than they do now, and everybody
Yep.
knew everybody. And you know, my dad was selectman, so we knew probably more people as a family name because of that. But still, there was just a lot more get-togethers with people having a good time.
Yep.
And I just don't see that anymore.
Mudville's coming back to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
They're-
hopefully.
Yeah.
They usually go to somebody's house every Friday night, and then they close down the street once a year.
Where
And
do you live now?
Prentice Street, up past Outpost.
Okay, so you're way
Right.
past out of this.
Yeah, my son lives in Mudville,
Okay,
on the corner of Pleasant Union.
okay.
And
Yeah, that's a nice neighborhood down
after
Well-
high school, I moved down to Winthrop, corner of Winthrop and Vine, because that was my grandfather's house. So my grandfather lived in that house. My grandmother lived on the corner of Exchange and Front, and we lived on Pearl. So
Oh, you could get snacks all the way home.
I
Wow.
used to stay with her most of the time, and from first grade, I'd walk to Andrews School from her house with a bunch of kids.
Sure.
No parent was walking with us. So
I know. I think that's probably the saddest thing is just the fear, you know, that your kids aren't safe.
Yeah.
You know, I was just talking about that with someone that as recently as 8 years ago, you know, I had a situation in which there was someone that was nervous about their child who was 8 or 9 walking from the corner of Washington and Central down to Blair Square. And, you know, what if she gets kidnapped? And it's like, well, when did that last happen? You know? I mean, we've had some serious
Well, I
things
think,
happen,
too,
but
watching the news, because I know when,
Oh, I know.
when my children were growing up, I was on Baker Street, right across from
Yeah.
the Wilder School, and they were on very short leashes. Molly Bish had
Mm-hmm.
disappeared. It was like, I don't know, 22 years ago today or
It
something.
wasn't just Holliston, it was the world that changed.
Yes,
you know,
it
and
did.
Holliston changed along with
and
it.
yeah, I said no, unless you're with like 3 or 4 kids, you're not walking like out onto Washington and Concord. And I was worried.
well, I was a terrible mother. There's no question about it then, because let's see, by the time my kids were 13, they were riding bikes to Millis. Let's see, when would that have been?
Well, we did that too.
You
so,
know,
yeah.
by the
Yeah, no, it's nice.
Yeah.
It is nice. But, I mean, once they became like 16, 17, you know, they're going to do what they want anyway. But
That's true.
When they were younger, yeah, I was
if not, they were
very
doing it
nervous.
behind your back.
Yeah, I'm
anyway,
sure
so-
they
Right,
were.
exactly.
And we took a head count twice a day.
Now, do you remember thinking at all about the quality of the education in school? If you were to give the public schools an alphabet letter for grade, you know, A through F, where would you put them? What were the
From
Holliston
our
schools?
experiences in
Yeah.
school, I would say they were a good A. I mean, I graduated. I mean, I went to a state school, but I was I wasn't brilliant, but
And you were prepared. You
and
found
I was
yourself as
prepared.
when
I
you
felt
got there.
prepared, and I know I had 2 girlfriends. Both went to Marion. And they were both on academic probation the first semester. So I said, well, I guess Holliston didn't do too well, too badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were good.
Well, when I was there, Holliston was good if you were going to college. If you weren't going to college, and I wasn't going to college, if you weren't going to college, guidance met you there requisite once a year, and that was it.
Really?
If you were going to college, they were happy with you. 'Cause
I don't remember them thinking. I don't remember thinking whether I don't know if they did that back then, because I don't remember. I didn't know what I want. Well, I was in the 7th grade, too, so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I
Well,
get
they
out.
put us in, by the time I was in high school, they had college curriculum 1,
Yeah,
college curriculum
yes.
2, shop, and I don't know what else. I think that was the 3
Business.
categories. So
Wasn't
if you
there a
weren't.
business category too?
Yeah, there was a
There was a
business.
business,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, that could have been the 4th one.
Because I was trying to think of what they were today, but yeah, there was a business category where you could get a little bit of computer work and the typing and,
Right.
data entry.
No, that was
Yeah.
there when I
But-
was
so
there.
they
You're
allowed,
right.
I mean, I think the good thing about the school system is I was in college curriculum, but I got to do shop, and I
Yeah.
got to do, keying in key cards, and got to do sewing, and, you could do electives. They allowed different things.
Wow.
Which,
We had home ec, but boys didn't take it.
well,
We had chefs and bakers.
Oh, God, I remember that.
and,
I remember.
I've
girls
heard of
had-
that.
Yeah.
The girls had home ec.
Home ec,
so-
yeah.
Yeah.
maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what it was.
Oh,
But anyway,
God. Yeah, I
There were a
do
lot of,
remember.
there were a lot of choices.
Yeah.
I think it was a good school.
Yeah,
I think the teachers cared, the administration cared. It was, life was simpler back then. And there was no zero tolerance. You could have some fun. There was a lot of, stuff going on that nowadays kids would be expelled for, suspended for. There was just some clean fun. And people tolerated a little bit of that. And I think they almost encouraged it to a degree. Let you grow up and learn a few things the hard way.
Yeah, when you get hit off the top of the head with something.
Right. And I can remember when my girlfriend and I were sophomores, and this teacher we had for English, I think it was, and he was like really, really nice. He was single. He was probably in his 30s. And he bought an inn down in Orleans. And I can't remember how it all came about, but he was the drama coach also, and my girlfriend and I were in drama. We were in all the plays and all that. And he asked us if we'd like to come for the summer to be chambermaids at his. He redid this barn and house right very close to Nauset Beach, and we're like, well, so he met our parents. And my mother wasn't. I mean, she was easygoing, but she wasn't real easygoing, And they let us go, both our parents. And I think of it today, and I'm thinking, if my daughter ever came home and said that, but it was perfectly fine. We did it for 3 years, right through beginning of college. He was wonderful to us. He paid us. He gave us room and board. We went to the beach every day, and I'm thinking, wow, that was a good time, but you wouldn't even think of letting your daughter do that today.
Might not even let your son do it.
You might not even let your son do it. Yeah, it was no
Yeah.
big deal. Yeah.
So what's your favorite memory?
I think the park where they used to have bonfires on top of the cliff for 4th of July. Used to have fireworks there.
Yeah. I think growing up on Ashland Street, like when I was younger, there was a girl across the street who was my age, and it was me, and then there was another girl next to me. And we used to go, and the boys would come too, my brother and Ricky Kruger and them. We'd go up and we'd have lunch, and we used to call it Big Chief. And it was a huge rock. Like, I lived on the side of the street in Ashland Street, like the sand pit was behind me, but on the other side of Ashland Street, you went behind Julie's house and you went into the woods. I mean, you were close to home. You could see the houses, but there was a big rock, and we'd climb up there and we'd have lunch and make little houses using the pine needles, and we just had a great time. It was, that was our world, and we thought it was great. I've often wondered if Big Chief's still there or whether it's all been developed.
You should
It wouldn't
take a
look
walk
as
over-
big now.
I know.
It won't look as big, that's for sure. How about you, Jack?
Geez, what I can tell and what I can't tell, that's a hard one. Because there's things that I don't want my ears to know. But I don't know. I think I had so much fun. I think it was a great town to grow up in. Friends were friends. I still have them now. The town, to me, is still Holliston. In essence, it's people change, but we still own the land going down to the cemetery. My family still lives there. My brother lives in town. The sign shop is still in business. My wife lived in town. Her dad was Charlie Caswell. So, there's a lot of just too many memories
My
to
first boss.
pick one out. There's just
I was just thinking that. As soon as I heard it, it was like, oh, Phil.
That was my first
First
boss.
boss.
Yeah.
And he lived over on Prentice Street. He built that big house there.
Well, they used to live
Yeah.
right downtown,
Yeah.
the corner of Charles.
Right, and then he built.
Before that, his shop was where the first Kamala's was
Right.
on Union Street,
I
and he
love-
lived next door
yeah.
to that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I work with Diane.
okay.
It's
Yeah,
cool.
see,
Right.
That's his
the
wife.
thing
I know.
that you said.
Oh, you're Diane's husband. Okay.
Yes, I am.
Now I got it.
Blame it on.
Oh, the stories I can tell you about Diane.
Not only did everybody know each other, but most of them are related too.
Right.
And if they weren't at first, because we were talking about this, before we started, later in life, they may have, somebody may have died or they may have gotten divorced, and later in life, some of the natives
yeah.
moved around and
Oh,
just,
oh, yeah.
realigned
Yeah.
with different folks.
Right.
Which,
Well,
Exactly.
my oldest brother married a Campasol, and my
Byron.
son married a Campasol.
Byron?
No, Everett.
Oh, Everett. Now, what about?
Yeah, what about Byron?
was your middle brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So is he
He died.
I think I thought
He was
I heard
young when he
that. Yeah, he
died.
was.
Yeah, he was in
Yeah.
his 50s, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's sad.
It is kind of fun, though, just to
I
think
know.
back, because some of those, when you talk about the names, some of them were only just names. I mean, I knew Byron just because Byron was always with Bobby, and I just kind
He
of,
was kind of a friend of my brother's. Too.
but,
Yeah,
Yes.
good friend.
Yes.
you all knew one another. And I remember when I would go into Pete's, people eventually got to know who I was because I had the store there. And I considered it a real accomplishment when they started knowing my
When they
name.
actually knew who you were.
It was like, wow, I've really made it now.
Good old boys, yeah,
I was
yeah.
so proud of myself. And then wouldn't you know, just a very few years later, my son Alan started working for Pete. And now I became Al's mother.
Well, now you've really made it.
So I mean, my identity, I had an identity for about that long, but at any rate.
God.
Did you realize the town was growing? All these new people were coming in, right?
It just sort of happens.
Just sort of happens, you knew, did they merge in okay? I mean, it
I
was,
think you knew it from traffic. The traffic patterns in town. I think about at 5 to 5:30 at night, the cop would stand under the flashing light in downtown Holliston
remember that,
directing
yeah.
traffic. And then, they got too scared to do that. I mean, really, it was too dangerous to be out there doing it because of the amount of traffic. So I think that's the biggest sign initially was just traffic. And being in kind of the industry with my dad and building is, he put up signs for Martin Serrell and everything else. So you got to go in some of these new developments and just, house after house after house where there were fields. I mean, we used to drive in the sand pits and up at the Bat Caves up at Willowgate Rise. I mean, that was a famous hangout place. So a little story about the police in Holliston back in the day. We'd have a party there and everybody drank and we were underaged and the cops would pull in and they'd grab our beers and they'd dump them out and tell us to go home. And no arrests, nobody got in trouble. It was just a friendly, okay, don't do this. And then next weekend we'd be doing it again and they come in again. And it was just kind of the way life was simple. It was 100% tolerance instead of zero tolerance. I mean, they let you get away with stuff as long as you weren't destructive. Unfortunately, we lost a few people to drunk driving accidents, so that became an issue. But it was simpler. That's all.
They poured yours out, huh? They took ours down to the police station and partied with it
Yeah,
the
no,
next weekend.
back in that
told
day,
them they were gonna
no, they did right in front of us.
I remember that when graduation was on Sundays, was on Friday nights.
I graduated
Before,
Friday night.
okay.
Yeah, that's why they
That
changed
was,
it.
we had so many accidents, and there was one year we lost, if I remember correctly, 5 students in one high school class. It was the same year Gail Forsyth graduated, and I can't remember which year it was, but
Yeah, it was.
I think it might have been our class.
was-
We lost Danny,
Yeah, I was going to say it was
Franny
a
Diane,
couple
Rhonda
years before
Overt,
me.
and we had. I think it was our class.
And
And
Yancey and
It was a year, you just cringed every time.
So what year would that have been? 60?
69.
It was somewhere in,
Yeah.
Well,
but,
that's the year I graduated from college, so
yeah, you were already out of
I was
it.
probably out of it.
But it was so scary, that's why the schools
Yeah.
changed it to move it
Yeah.
to Sunday. And
Right.
it seems to have worked,
Right.
from
Yeah,
that standpoint.
So maybe the zero tolerance is a good thing. I mean, I think kids have learned, now they Uber. If they're going out drinking, they don't drive, they Uber, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we drank and drove and got in accidents, and some people died, and that's the way it was back then. But, that's some good things that come out of societal changes as the people learn and we grow, and, they don't do that as much anymore.
Yeah.
Now they just do heroin.
Oh, dear. Okay. Do you ever remember your parents complaining about the town growing? No,
Not complaining.
just noticing.
Mine were pretty active in town. My father was an assessor for years and in the VFW, but I never remember complaining about it.
I think the only thing was that as the town grew and more necessities became required, the taxes went up. And that was, because of growth. And that wasn't a good thing with my family, at least.
Yeah.
We weren't that well-to-do, and every time the tax rate went up, it was, another night with hot dogs and beans.
It's funny, I was talking, what was I doing today? I can't even remember. But anyway, we were talking about town meeting and how town meetings in the 70s could go on night after night after night, and you just, you'd want to cry to get out of there. I mean, just please stop arguing.
Yeah.
But at that time,
And there was always a half a dozen that were doing all the arguing, every single town
And
meeting.
then they'd wait them out, and then you'd find the people in the audience, oh, I'm just going home. They go home, and then they bring this up again and pass or defeat whatever they wanted.
When I think back to that time, what I remember is that the schools were growing so fast. That's where those taxes
Yes,
were
yes,
going.
yes.
Well, they built so many
Because,
new schools.
well, they had to. I mean, my kids were just infants and toddlers, but we were on double sessions. I mean, you had kids at the VFW, you had
Yes,
kids in
my
the
kids never had to
schools,
do that.
at the in Jordan Hall over at the
That
Congregational
was double
Church.
sessions at the old high school, the
I mean,
Adams
they were,
School now.
yeah. I mean, there were double sessions for at least 1 year, and maybe more, but I only remember the 1 year. So our student population, by the time we hit 1970, the student population was 5,790 kids, okay? And that had come up from, a couple thousand kids.
Wow.
So that's where all of your taxes just went to all of those schools.
Right.
Now our student population is down to 2,700 by comparison, okay? So it's
Well, people aren't having
more than half.
as many
Right.
children.
It's the single biggest change is the size, the number of children
Right.
in the families now.
Right.
My neighborhood, I live next door to the Delikers and the Mahoneys. 5 on one side, 5 on the other. The Morellis down at the end of the street had 6,
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
So-
I'm on Baker Street, and there hasn't been a huge changeover, well, a slow bit change, but it's remains a very desirable neighborhood.
It's a sweet neighborhood.
It's a very sweet neighborhood. People move in, and it's just a nice place. Actually, I've lived there the longest now. There's one lady that's older than me, but she didn't start there. She didn't live in Holliston. Yeah, it's a nice neighborhood, and I'm right across from the street I went to the first grade in, and the woman that bought it has just done a phenomenal job trying to keep it
Yeah.
the way it was, but
Lake
much,
Hole Wilder.
but much nicer.
Yeah, it is
Even the
nice.
first floor is just, it's the same. It's 2 big rooms, and
Yeah.
she's done things to it, but it looks great.
Yeah.
And we do have a new neighbor now, but they're both very, they don't have any children, they're very friendly, they wave, they talk, and so, yeah, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
We do have an Andrews School brick on our mantle in our
I
house.
love
so-
Yeah.
Andrews School.
Yeah, I thought that was a real shame. I think that
I
was
did.
a mistake.
You know,
I
I was
agree, yeah.
I was mad.
I was too.
I was angry. I didn't vote for them to buy that building that they put Parks and Rec in. and all-
1750?
Yeah, I I'm mad that over all the years, I know it was an old school and it didn't meet the needs, but I wish they'd kept it up a little bit, so
Well,
maybe
that's the-
something
That's
could
the
have been
thing,
done.
that
That right there, you
That
know.
If they kept it up,
yes,
they could have. but-
Maintenance, and we're sliding into the same pit again. You know, maintenance is the thing that you can afford to leave behind. You have to keep paying for the teachers and the books and everything else.
right.
And then you
right.
end up with a school that doesn't meet any standards.
Right, and it doesn't have to be a school. I
Yeah,
was
it
so
could've been
excited to
anything.
think it was going to get turned into condominiums.
Oh, I
It
really,
just left as a building that
yeah.
was there forever.
Yes.
It was going to be senior apartments.
That would be
Ann Talbot
perfect.
and I were going to get rooms. We were going to each get
I was
our
on
own
the, I was
apartment.
up first on the list.
And then we could walk to the center of a town when we had to give up our cars and everything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just furious.
Close to Chesmore's.
Close to Chesmore's.
Would not make
you
the
know.
last trip.
True. Seriously, it's all
Oh my
perfect.
God.
Perfect. Oh, Phil's
No,
Phil.
I know. It's, yeah, I was very upset with that. I think it was a,
It's a mistake.
It was a big
The thing
mistake.
is, right now, we're talking about the possibility of having to build a new high school, and I could do all kinds of shows on that subject. But for the moment, I will merely say, if that does come to pass, it will be the third time in my life that I've been paying for something to happen
Right.
with a high school in Holliston.
Right.
You know, it's like,
Right.
how many times do I have to do this?
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway.
I know.
So.
Oh, they let Flag go to one part too.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, I know what probably wasn't, it was like the new one story and all that, but they don't keep anything up.
Well-
Even the Placentino School. I mean, I subbed there and,
Well, we digress now.
Yeah,
So
really,
we're going to
okay.
get back on
All
track
right.
here. We'll do shows on schools. But at any rate, so I gave you a heads up. I was going to ask you for one word for your childhood and one word today. So how would you describe Holliston in one word from your childhood, Phil?
I'd say comfortable.
very supportive.
I'd say simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Today?
Hectic.
Fantastic.
Nice.
I still love it, but it's expensive.
Expensive.
It is.
Yeah, it is expensive. Need more business. Your father used to stand in the middle of the, you know, he was big in the Industrial Commission at
Right.
that time and would talk about, you know, building a tax base and so forth and so on. Now, let me see, that was like 1970.
Yep,
You
yep.
know,
Well, it's so
we're
difficult though with the sewers and what kind of places can we have besides car dealership or used cars and
Well, that's actually one of the reasons, you know, if I were doing the old Groucho Marx show, the duck would come down and quack right now and give you $25 because this whole effort to sort of focus on and talk about downtown is in part because the town is talking about putting, you know, a sewer system just for the commercial,
Right.
village commercial area with the intent that maybe we could get some development. And along with that, if we're not careful, if we don't zone and make some, not changes, yes, changes to our zoning bylaw, what would happen or could happen is that the buildings that we all recognize and may still want to see there would be bulldozed
Razed,
tomorrow. Okay, it would be Andrews School all over. So in preparation of that, you know, some folks in town have started talking about what do you have to change in the zoning to prevent that from happening while you still encourage that what's inside the buildings, go have at it. You know, if you want it to be a restaurant, great. If you want it to be a, I don't, you know, whatever.
Right.
If it's legal, go do it. But try to preserve that look and feel because when you go to sell your house, that's one of the things that people coming to this town like.
a lot of
Right.
towns in this area. Two of my sons live kind of north. One's in Lincoln, the other one's in Carlisle.
Lovely towns.
Yeah, but when they ask where I'm from, they go, if they know the town, they'll go, oh my God, that is such a beautiful downtown.
And that's what we got to hang on to. And so,
Because a lot of the town, they don't have it.
No.
Lincoln downtown is, I mean,
Look at Framingham.
yeah, I know.
yeah, but Lincoln's
Sad
expensive.
downtown.
Yeah, didn't used to be like that.
No, no.
Well, no, see, you say, no, I'll take it
All
off
right.
camera.
All right, folks. So then today we did, no, where did I go? Did I finish all of you? We
about
said
how
Yes,
you're-
yes,
simple,
yes,
and
yes,
today
that's it,
Yes.
yes.
And you said expensive. Okay. I think I'm going to throw in just, I think I'm more in this sort of a little frenetic. It's just always busy. It's just the only time I can go downtown now and really, just sort of, it's, on some of the holidays or on early Sunday morning when you can remember what it was like to be able to
Even
be
on
downtown.
off hours, there's
Yeah.
a traffic jam that goes
Well-
halfway to Highland Street. And
Yeah, it's all crazy. It's all crazy. But it's still a great town.
It is.
Right,
It
and
is.
You
you
know, it is still a
don't
great
want to
town.
see the highway.
No.
You don't want to see it made bigger. It's
No.
going to look like strip malls on either side, and you're going to lose all the character.
Right. No, I don't want it to change like that. So, at any rate, thank you all very much. And remember, if you have a story that you'd be willing to share that you want to write, or if you want somebody to interview you and have it written for you to include in the history, if you have a family story you want to, if you just want to put in something that says this is who we were and this is the ancestry chart, whatever you call it, that can happen too. I'd like it to be I'd like the website to be a place where people who are doing ancestry searches and that kind of stuff could really
Right.
find people. Okay, so thanks very much.
You're very
You're welcome.
welcome.
All right, and to all of you who are watching, if you've been encouraged by the idea that you could maybe write a story, please do. Even if you've only lived here for a couple years, what made you decide to come here? Was it the schools? In a lot of cases, realtors tell us it was the downtown. Maybe it was just the house, and that's okay too. But anyway, let us know if you're interested. In the meantime, thank you, and we'll catch you another time. Bye.